There is a place in southern Africa where the land turns gold before the rains come, where termite mounds rise like cathedrals from the cracked earth, and the air at dawn smells of dust and something alive and urgent. Across this landscape, a small group of animals moves with a kind of frantic, joyful energy that seems almost out of place in a world built on survival and death. They are painted, splashed with black and white and amber, no two quite the same, as though each one was finished by a different hand. They are African wild dogs, and they are running. But not every one of them is running toward something real. A few of them are running toward something they cannot yet name, something they have never yet touched. They are chasing a ghost of a thing, a shape that their bodies understand, even if their minds do not. They are the pups, and they are learning. If you want to watch one of nature's most quietly extraordinary dramas unfold, stay with this. Because what happens inside a wild dog pack before a kill is ever made, what happens in the dust and the games and the strange rituals of a wild dog family, is one of the most sophisticated, most deliberate, and most underappreciated systems of education that the natural world has ever produced. Subscribe now if stories like this are what you come here for. There is a great deal more ahead. The African wild dog, Lycaon pictus, the painted wolf, goes by many names. It was once found across most of sub-Saharan Africa in numbers that stretched into the hundreds of thousands. Today, fewer than 7,000 remain. They exist in fragmented populations scattered across places like the Okavango Delta, the Selous, the Kruger, the Luangwa Valley. They are listed as endangered, and yet, in the places where they survive, they remain one of the most successful hunters on the continent. Their kill rate in some studies exceeds 80%. No other large African predator comes close. A lion succeeds roughly 1 time in 4, a cheetah perhaps a little better. Wild dogs hunt and succeed more often than almost anything else, with teeth and 4 legs. Understanding why means understanding something that begins long before the hunt. It begins in a den. The den is rarely anything they have built themselves. Wild dogs are opportunists in the best sense. They take over old aardvark burrows, natural holes in rocky outcrops, spaces beneath dense thickets of vegetation. What matters is that it is cool, that it offers some protection from the sun, and that it is deep enough to shelter something small and fragile from the world outside. The dominant female, the alpha, gives birth here. Litter sizes are extraordinarily large compared to other canids. 12 pups is common. 16 is not unheard of. The den becomes a place of enormous noise and warmth and movement in the weeks immediately after birth. The alpha female rarely leaves during this early period. The rest of the pack becomes a support network so tight and so efficiently organized that it genuinely functions like an extended family in the deepest sense. Adults who are not the biological parents bring food back to the den. They regurgitate meat directly to the mother, who has not hunted in days. They take turns standing guard outside. They play with each other in ways that seem almost celebratory, tails up, those enormous round ears rotating. Their vocalizations, that strange bird-like twittering that people who have heard it never forget. The den is alive with all of this. And right in the center of it, the pups are beginning to open their eyes. The first weeks are about nourishment and warmth and nothing much else. The pups are born dark, almost uniformly so, and the distinctive markings that will identify each individual animal for the rest of its life take weeks to fully emerge. They stumble over each other in the dimness of the burrow. They nurse. They sleep in piles that shift and reform throughout the day. The world outside does not exist for them yet, but it is about to. There is a moment, around 3 to 4 weeks of age, when a pup first appears at the entrance to the den. It is tentative. The sunlight is very bright, and everything is enormous, and the smells coming in from the open air are overwhelming in a way that takes some time to process. Other pack members often gather nearby at this moment, not in a threatening way, rather the opposite. There is a quality to the way the adults position themselves, a loose encirclement, a presence that says, "You are safe, we are here, the world is interesting." The pup looks out, then, often, retreats again. But it comes back. It always comes back. This moment of emergence is more important than it might first appear, because the den entrance is where the first lessons begin, not formal instruction, not anything that resembles what we might think of as teaching in the conscious, intentional sense, but instruction nonetheless, shaped by behavior that has been refined over millions of years of evolution into something that works with extraordinary consistency. The pup watches. It watches everything. Adult wild dogs are rarely still. Even when they are resting, there is an alertness, an orientation toward the environment that never fully switches off. When something moves on the edge of the open ground near the den, ears come up, eyes fix, bodies go taut in a way that is completely unlike the boneless relaxation of a moment before. The pups notice this. They track the direction of attention. They look at what the adults are looking at, and in doing so, they begin to build what biologists call a prey image, a mental template of what is worth pursuing. What kind of movement, what kind of shape, what kind of speed triggers the right response? It is worth taking a moment to appreciate just how much information is embedded in this apparently simple act. When a pack of adults stiffens at the sight of a distant impala, they are not merely alerting the pups to danger or prey. They are demonstrating, through the precision of their own attention, what matters. The direction of their gaze is a vector. Follow it and you find the thing worth knowing about. The pup does not need to be told this. It reads it directly from the posture, from the orientation, from the sudden quality of stillness in animals that are never entirely still. This is the first layer of education, attention itself. Around 4 to 5 weeks of age, the play begins in earnest. And here is where everything gets complicated and beautiful, and entirely easy to underestimate if you are watching quickly. Wild dog pups play with an intensity that borders on violence. They wrestle constantly. They bite each other's legs, their ears, the backs of their necks. They chase each other in tight circles around the den area. They chase insects, leaves, anything that moves. And gradually, they begin to chase the adults. Not all the adults engage equally with this, but many of them do something remarkable. They run, not at full speed, not at the effortless ground-eating pace that a wild dog at hunt is capable of, but they run, and they make themselves catchable in a particular way. And when the pup catches them, or nearly catches them, something is transmitted. This is the first structured chase practice, and it happens spontaneously, repeatedly, every single day. What the pup is learning, without any awareness that it is learning anything, is what pursuit feels like from the inside. The pumping of small legs, the way balance shifts as direction changes. The relationship between the movement of the thing being chased and the adjustment required from its own body. The beginning of what will eventually become one of the most sophisticated cooperative pursuit strategies in the animal kingdom is being laid down here, in the dirt outside a den, in a game that looks like pure chaos. There is a specific behavior that experienced observers have noted in adult wild dogs playing with pups, and it is so consistent that it reads as almost deliberate. The adult will run a short distance, then slow, then speed up again, then turn slightly. It is as though the adult is demonstrating the stuttered, zigzagging movement of prey, because that is, in a very real sense, exactly what it is doing. Impala do not run in straight lines when pursued. They jink, they cut back, they change speed without warning. And the muscle memory required to track and respond to these unpredictable changes has to be built somewhere. It is being built here, in play, before the pup has ever seen a hunt. The den period lasts roughly 3 months. This is a long time by the standards of large carnivores, and it is not accidental. The pups are not merely growing during this time. They are absorbing information at a rate that will never quite be equaled again. Every day is full of new input, new smells, new sounds, new animals glimpsed from the safe margin of the den surroundings. The adults return from hunts during this period, and the return of hunters is itself a lesson. When hunters come back, they come back with energy. There is a greeting ceremony that wild dogs perform at almost every reunion, and it is exuberant to a degree that seems almost excessive until you understand its function. The high-pitched calls, the touching of muzzles, the tail raising, the mutual investigation, all of this is information. The adults that return from a successful hunt smell of blood and prey and exhaustion. They smell of what a hunt is. The pups press against them and breathe this in. It is registered. It goes into the accumulating record of what the world contains and what is possible in it. Adults regurgitate food for the pups, and this act also carries information. The meat that is brought back in the stomachs of hunters is meat from a specific prey animal. It smells of a specific thing. And studies of wild dog behavior have suggested that pups that spend their first months receiving food from hunts targeting particular prey species are more likely to develop a preference for those species as they grow. The prey image is being refined not just by sight, but by smell, by taste, by the direct chemical testimony of digested prey. At around 3 months of age, the pack begins to move. The den is abandoned. This transition is one of the most dramatic in the pup's early life, and it is handled with extraordinary care by the group. The adults do not simply leave and expect the pups to follow. The movement of the pack during the nomadic phase immediately following den abandonment is calibrated to what the pups can manage. Distances are shorter than normal. Resting periods are more frequent. The pack's range during these early nomadic weeks is a compressed version of what it will eventually become. And throughout all of this, the pups are moving through the landscape itself and encountering it with senses that are now fully developed and intensely receptive. Moving through the bush is its own education. The pups learn terrain. They learn the difference between ground that is good for running and ground that will trip them. They learn water. They learn the smell of other predators and the behavior that accompanies the detection of that smell. They watch the adults respond to lions with a kind of managed vigilance, a calculated distance, a readiness to move. They watch the response to leopards, to hyenas, to other threats. Each response is different, and each difference is observed. But it is the hunts themselves that now begin to teach most powerfully, because the pups are present for them. The first time a pup witnesses a wild dog hunt, it is likely overwhelming. The pack at hunt is a different organism from the pack at rest. Everything about the energy changes. There is a pre-hunt greeting that is among the most striking things you can witness in the African bush. The pack assembles, the animals touch and vocalize and circle each other with growing intensity. The twittering calls increase in frequency. Tails come up. There is something building in the group, a shared arousal, a kind of collective tuning that brings all the individual animals into alignment. And then, without any signal that a human observer can reliably identify, they go. The pups at this early stage do not go with them. They wait, or they try to follow and quickly fall behind. But what they have witnessed in those moments of the pre-hunt ceremony is being stored. The pattern of what a hunt beginning looks like is going in. The smell of the pack at high arousal is going in. The specific quality of movement that shifts from play run to hunt run, a difference that is real and detectable, is going in. As weeks pass and pups grow stronger, they begin to follow hunts for longer. At first, they are simply running in the wake of the pack, with no real understanding of what is happening ahead. But the adults regulate this participation in a fascinating way. The pack does not hunt at maximum efficiency when pups are present. Research conducted over long periods of observation has demonstrated that wild dog groups with pups regularly hunt at adjusted speeds, take prey that requires shorter pursuits, and return more frequently to check on the location of following pups. The hunt is modified to include the apprentices. It is not charity, it is investment. The pup running at the back of a hunt in progress is still learning. It is learning pace. It is learning endurance. It is learning what a sustained effort over distance feels like, and what the body requires when making that effort. And it is beginning to read the behavior of the prey animal from a following distance, beginning to understand that the way prey moves when being pursued is different from the way prey moves when relaxed, and that these differences are signals of information about whether the hunt is going well or badly. Wild dogs hunt by exhaustion. They are not the fastest animals in their ecosystem. A cheetah outpaces them on a straight sprint. Impala can outmaneuver them in short bursts. But wild dogs run at an intermediate speed that they can sustain for distances that their prey cannot match. They are tireless. Their respiratory system is built for it. Their lean bodies carry almost no excess weight. And the strategy they use, the relay-like quality of the group pursuit in which different individuals take the lead position as others tire, is not something that happens by instinct alone. It is learned behavior, coordinated behavior, behavior that requires each individual to read the state of its pack mates and the state of the prey animals simultaneously, and to make decisions based on both. This reading of others, this capacity to understand the position and intent and fatigue of every other animal in a moving, fluid, fast-changing situation, is what the pups are building during every hour of every day in their first year. Every chase game, every wrestling bout, every moment of following the pack on a hunt that they cannot yet participate in actively. All of it is rehearsal for the moment when the knowledge crystallizes and becomes action. There are specific behaviors that adult wild dogs direct toward pups that are worth examining individually because each one is teaching something specific. The first of these is what might be called the invitation to chase. An adult dog will select a pup from the group and engage it in a very deliberate way. It will lower its front end in a bow. It will make a specific vocalization. Then it will take off running, but in a way that is obviously calibrated. Too slow to escape, but fast enough to require real effort from the pup to close the gap. The adult runs in a pattern, not a straight line. There are turns, sudden stops, changes of direction. The pup follows, stumbling at first, learning with each repetition to anticipate the turn, to cut the corner rather than following exactly in the path of the adult, to use the information in the adult's movement to predict what comes next. This is the beginning of interception strategy. One of the cornerstones of wild dog hunting technique. Interception is what makes wild dogs different. Rather than simply following prey from behind, the experienced hunter reads where the prey is going and positions itself to be there in advance. It is predictive movement, and the cognitive work behind it, the mental modeling of another animal's trajectory, is not trivial. It requires a capacity for spatial reasoning that is being developed in these games, in this play, before it ever needs to work under real hunt conditions. The second behavior worth examining is the presentation of prey. When adults return from a hunt with a carcass, or when a hunt ends near enough to the pups that they can approach, the adults manage the pups' access to the meat in a specific way. Older, more experienced animals eat first, not because of dominance in the straightforward aggressive sense, but because they are given access by the structure of the group. Pups observe this order. They observe which animals take what position. They observe the behavior of submissive approach, the lowered body, the averted gaze, the way a low-status animal signals that it is not challenging. All of this is social education, and in a highly cooperative hunting species, social education and hunting education are inseparable. You cannot be a good wild dog hunter if you cannot function within the group. The group is the weapon. There is a behavior that pups begin to show somewhere in the 5 to 6 month range that marks a significant developmental threshold. They begin to harry, not to kill, not yet. But when prey is cornered or caught by adults, the pups rush in and bite. They bite at legs, at flanks, at anything they can reach. The prey is already going down under the attention of the adults. The pup's contribution is not decisive, but the pup is practicing the physical act of biting a large, living, moving animal, something that is very different from biting a sibling in play or gnawing on a piece of already dead meat. The prey animal kicks. It fights back. The pup learns evasion, how to stay close to prey without being injured by it. It learns where on the body a bite is effective and where it is not. It learns what real prey smells and sounds like up close, the specific vocalizations of distress, the smell of fear, the particular quality of movement in an animal that is dying. This is knowledge you cannot get anywhere else, and the adults allow the pups access to it deliberately. As the first year progresses, the role of specific adults in pup education becomes more distinct. It is not always the alpha pair that invests most in direct pup instruction. Sometimes it is a subordinate animal, often a yearling or 2-year-old, an animal that is itself relatively recently graduated from pup status. These younger adults have a quality of engagement with pups that is different from the engagement of older animals. They play more readily. They are more tolerant of being chased and caught. They seem to remember what it was to be learning, because the learning is not so far behind them. In some observed groups, the investment of these junior adults in pup education is so consistent and so focused that researchers have used the word tutoring without quite being willing to commit to it as a formal scientific descriptor. The social structure of the wild dog pack is worth pausing on because it is the frame within which all of this education happens, and understanding it reveals why the system is so stable and so effective. A typical wild dog pack consists of a dominant breeding pair, the alpha male and alpha female, and a number of subordinate adults who are usually, though not always, related to one or both of the breeding pair. These subordinates do not breed in most circumstances. Breeding by subordinates is actively suppressed by the alpha female in particular, and this constraint, which might seem like a loss for the subordinates, is actually a central feature of what makes the pack work. An animal that is not raising its own pups has all its energy available for the group. It can hunt longer, it can guard more vigilantly, it can spend more time playing with and feeding and educating the pups of the breeding pair, and because the subordinates are typically related to the pups, those pups carry many of the same genes. The subordinates' evolutionary interests are served by ensuring that these pups survive and develop into effective hunters. The education of the pups is not altruistic in any mystical sense. It is deeply self-interested at the level of gene transmission, but the result, the outcome in the world, is a system of cooperative child-rearing and cooperative education that is among the most extensive and most effective in any non-human mammal. The Okavango Delta in Botswana is one of the best places on Earth to witness this system in operation. The delta is not a static place. It floods and recedes on a seasonal cycle driven by rainfall far to the north, in the Angolan highlands, where the Kavango River rises and sends its water southward across the Kalahari. The flooding reaches the delta weeks or months after the rains that caused it, so the delta moves against the seasons in a way that shapes everything that lives in it. When the waters rise, prey species concentrate on islands, predators concentrate with them. The hunting is different from open savanna. It requires different skills, different adaptations. And pups born into delta living packs must learn a version of the chase that includes water, that includes changed terrain, that includes prey behavior modified by flooding. In these flooded conditions, wild dogs do something that looks almost absurd and turns out to be perfectly sensible. They swim. They are good swimmers. And they will pursue prey into water, or cut it off from the water, or use the flooding itself as a herding tool, pushing prey onto peninsulas of land from which escape is limited. Pups that grow up in the delta learn this. They see it. They begin to practice the water entry, first tentatively, then with increasing confidence. The feel of water, the way movement in it is different, the way prey moves in it differently. All of this goes into the accumulating education of a delta wild dog pup in a way that would never happen for a pup born in the dry thorn bush of the Kruger. Different landscapes demand different learning, and wild dog groups provide it. This regional variation in hunting technique is one of the most striking demonstrations of the cultural dimension of wild dog behavior, because what pups learn is not entirely fixed by instinct. It is shaped by what the specific group they grow up in does. Wild dog groups in different areas have been documented using distinct hunting strategies, pursuing distinct prey species, using distinct techniques for specific aspects of a hunt, and young dogs raised in one group that survive to join another group, which sometimes happens when packs fragment or when single animals disperse, carry their learned techniques with them, and sometimes introduce them into the new group's repertoire. This is culture, not in a metaphorical sense. In a functional, observable, documented sense, wild dogs have culture. The vocalization system of wild dogs is itself a subject worth extended attention because it is more sophisticated than it appears, and it plays a direct role in the education of pups. The famous Twitter call, that rapid, high-pitched, almost bird-like sound that wild dogs use during greetings and before hunts, is not a single sound, but a complex signal whose meaning varies with context. Pups begin producing versions of this call very early, before they are capable of any real hunting participation. And the calls they produce are not identical to adult calls. They are simpler, less modulated. Over time, through constant exposure to adult vocalizations, through what appears to be a process of active vocal learning, not unlike what happens in songbirds, pup calls converge toward adult patterns. They learn to twitter correctly, and because this call is used to synchronize pack behavior before and during hunts, learning to produce it correctly and to respond to it correctly is part of learning to hunt. A dog that cannot read or contribute to the group's vocal coordination is a dog that will hunt less effectively. There is a specific call that functions as a rally signal, bringing dispersed pack members back together. There is a call that seems to function as a contact signal in dense vegetation, maintaining awareness of other pack members' positions when visual contact is lost. There is a call associated with the presentation of food, and pups that have been studied in detail develop a clear and specific response to this call very early, well before they understand anything about hunting itself. The sound of food being offered is one of the first meaningful signals a pup decodes. And from this simple beginning, the pup's capacity to read and respond to group vocalizations expands throughout its first year into a fully functional communication system that integrates it into the coordinated machinery of the pack hunt. The ears of a wild dog are worth a moment of specific attention. They are enormous relative to the size of the head, rounded, constantly mobile, rotating independently to sample sound from different directions simultaneously. This is not coincidental. The Botswana bush, the Tanzanian woodland, the South African lowveld, these are not open savannas. They are places of partial concealment. Things approach and depart unseen. Sound carries information that vision cannot always supply. A wild dog hunting in woodland must track prey partly by ear, must locate pack members by ear, must monitor the positions of competing predators by ear. The pup's outsized ears are working from the very first days. But the capacity to interpret what they receive, to assign meaning to specific sounds, to build a mental map of the world from auditory input alone, that is learned. It accumulates through experience, through the first year of life, through every night in the den, and every day on the move, and every hunt watched from behind. There is a specific phase in wild dog pup development that researchers sometimes call the harassment phase, and it is among the most practically important moments in the education of a young hunter. It occurs roughly at the 6 to 9 month mark, after the pups have been following hunts for some time and have had multiple opportunities to observe kills and hairy dying prey. At this point, the adults begin to allow, and in some cases actively encourage, pups to lead short chases. Not full hunts, not extended pursuits, but moments within a hunt where a pup is positioned correctly to make first contact with prey, and the adults hold back fractionally, allowing the pup to close the gap. The prey animal is not subdued. It is fully capable of evasion. The pup makes its attempt and either succeeds in maintaining contact or does not. If it does not, an adult takes over without drama, without correction, simply continuing the hunt as the pup falls back. If the pup does make contact, if it manages to grip a leg or bring down a juvenile gazelle, the adults are immediately present to assist. The pup is never left alone to manage something beyond its capacity, but it is given the chance to try. The emotional quality of these moments, as reported by researchers who have watched them closely, is extraordinary. Pups that make first contact with prey for the first time show behavioral responses that can only be described as heightened. There is a quality of intensity, of full engagement, that is visually distinct from the excitement of a play chase. Something has clicked. The simulation has connected with the reality, and the pup knows it, if not in any articulate sense, then in the way that all animals know the things their lives have been building toward. There is a risk in all of this that the adults are managing continuously. Pups that become overconfident, that rush into situations beyond their capacity, can be injured. Prey animals fight back. An impala ram weighing 60 kilograms with hooves that can split a skull is dangerous to a pup that has not yet learned when to commit and when to disengage. The regulation of pup participation in active hunt moments is therefore not just educational, it is protective. The adults read the situation and the pup simultaneously, and calibrate their own level of intervention to the margin between what the pup can handle and what the prey is capable of. This is a complex, dynamic, real-time calculation. It is happening in animals without language, without any explicit communication about what is happening. It is happening because natural selection has spent millions of years producing adults that are exquisitely sensitive to the developmental state of the pups they are invested in and to the level of risk that each moment presents. By the end of the first year, a wild dog pup has crossed a threshold that separates it from the animal it was at birth, in a way that goes far beyond physical growth. It is not merely bigger and faster, though it is both of these things. It is educated. It carries in its body and its brain a comprehensive model of what hunting requires. It knows its terrain, it knows its prey species and the behavioral specifics of each one. It knows its packmates, their strengths, their tendencies, the way each individual moves and communicates and positions itself in a hunt. It knows itself, not reflectively, not in the way a human might, but functionally, in the sense that it has accumulated enough experience of its own performance to run at the right pace, to bite at the right moment, to read the hunt and place itself correctly within it. None of this was inevitable. All of it was made possible by the social architecture of the pack, by the investment of every adult animal in the survival and competence of every pup, by a system of education that operates through play and observation and guided participation in a way that is so well integrated into the daily life of the group that it is easy to mistake for something that simply happens rather than something that is actively maintained. The threat to wild dogs is substantial, and it comes from several directions at once. Habitat loss is probably the most fundamental. The intact wilderness areas large enough to support viable wild dog populations are shrinking. Wild dogs require enormous ranges. A single pack may patrol a territory of hundreds of square kilometers. As human land use expands, as fences divide the landscape, as roads cut through migration corridors, the effective range available to a pack contracts. And a contracted range means less prey, more competition with other predators, more encounters with livestock, and the human responses that follow from those encounters. Disease is a second pressure. Wild dogs are susceptible to canine distemper and rabies, both of which can move through a small population with devastating speed. A pack hit by disease during the denning season, when the adults are most restricted in their movement and the pups are most vulnerable, can lose most of its members within weeks. Conservation programs working with wild dogs now include vaccination of pack members where possible, but reaching animals in remote populations remains logistically challenging. Conflict with humans over livestock predation is a third pressure, and it is perhaps the most emotionally complex. Wild dogs do take livestock. In areas where their natural prey has been reduced, the temptation to take goats or calves is real, and the pack's hunting efficiency makes them effective at it once they start. Retaliatory killing by farmers has accounted for a significant proportion of wild dog mortality in many populations over the past century. The work of changing this dynamic, of building the kind of economic and cultural incentive to protect rather than kill, is slow work. It requires long-term engagement with communities, compensation schemes, predator-proof enclosures, education programs. It is being done. In places like Zimbabwe's Hwange area and in parts of Kenya and Tanzania, relationships between human communities and wild dog populations are shifting in encouraging directions. But the gains are fragile and the pressures are persistent. In the Selous Game Reserve in Tanzania, one of the last great wild places on the African continent, wild dog populations have recovered from critical lows in the latter decades of the 20th century to something approaching stability, though stability here means constant vigilance and ongoing management rather than anything like safety. The Selous packs have been studied intensively, and what these studies have shown about the refinement of hunting technique across successive generations is among the most compelling evidence for the cultural transmission of knowledge in non-human animals. Packs that have maintained continuous lineages over decades hunt differently from packs that have been fragmented and reformed. They are more coordinated. They use their terrain more effectively. They make fewer errors in the critical moments of a pursuit. The knowledge is old. It has been passed down through the educational system of play and observation and guided participation through generations of pups that grew into hunters that raised new pups. There is something in this that is worth sitting with for a moment. The system that produces an adult wild dog hunter, a system built on play and social investment, and the patient transmission of embodied knowledge through daily experience, is a system that has been running continuously for longer than our own species has existed. Long before humans were sitting around fires, teaching their children to make tools or track animals, wild dogs were doing something functionally analogous in the red dust of an African dawn. Not with language, not with intention in any conscious sense, but with results. With outcomes that can be measured in kill rates and pup survival and population persistence across hundreds of thousands of years of a world that has not been kind to large carnivores. We tend to think of intelligence as something housed in individual brains. The exceptional animal, the problem solver, the one who figures something out that others cannot. But wild dogs embody a different model of intelligence, one that is distributed across the group, one that is maintained not in any single individual, but in the relationships between individuals, in the daily acts of play and feeding and protection and guidance, through which knowledge moves from body to body, generation to generation. The pack is the mind, the hunt is the thought, and the pup, stumbling and uncertain at the entrance to a den in the early morning light, is the beginning of a thought that will take a full year to finish. The impala on the far side of the open ground has no idea that it is being watched. It drops its head to graze, and the muscles of its flanks flicker against the flies. The morning is already warm. Somewhere in the tree line, something is awake and oriented, and paying attention in a way that the impala, absorbed in the grass beneath its feet, is not. And not far from that, tucked against the warm flank of an adult who is also watching, a pup is watching too. Its ears are up, its eyes are fixed on the same distant shape. It has never chased this kind of thing before and caught it, but everything in its body tells it that it knows how. Everything in its first year of life has been building toward this moment, without the pup ever being told that any building was taking place. The adult shifts its weight. The pup shifts with it. Something is about to happen, and when it does, it will not come from nowhere. It will come from every game of chase played in the dust outside a den, from every regurgitated meal delivered by a hunter, smelling of distance and blood, from every hunt watched from behind, from every adult who ran just slowly enough to be nearly caught. From a system of education so embedded in the daily life of a social group that it looks like living rather than learning. Because for a wild dog, living is learning, and learning is what turns a stumbling pup into one of the most effective hunters that Africa has ever produced. The grass bends in the early morning wind. The impala looks up, uncertain. The pack is already moving,